Borislav Ivkov was born in Belgrade, Yugoslavia at the time, now part of Serbia. He was born November 12, 1933. He passed away only a couple years ago on February 14, 2022. He was a national master in 1949, international master in 1954, and grandmaster in 1955. Did you know that Borislav Ivkov was the first ever junior world champion? That was in 1951. And he's got a laundry list of first place tournament finishes, including Mar del Plata 1955, Buenos Aires 1955, Sarajevo 1958, Belgrade 1959, Lima 1959, Santiago 1959, Beverwijk 1961, Venice 1966, Irsel 1966, the Canadian Open Chess Championship 1966, Sarajevo 1967, Malaga 1968, Stockholm 1970, Amsterdam 1974, Cienfuegos 1985, the Petrosian Memorial Tournament in Moscow in 1999, and he was the 2006 European Senior Chess Champion. Borislav Ivkov, pretty strong player. Bobby with the predictable e4 here, and Ivkov answers with a Caro-Kann, c6. Again with d4, and I mentioned earlier that up until this event, Bobby was always playing the two knights attack, so he has changed his opening here and played d4, d5, and this time he goes with the exchange variation, pawn takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn, c4 is Panov's attack, named for Vasily Panov. Panov lived from November 1st, 1906 to January 13th, 1973. He was a Soviet player, author, and journalist. Panov's greatest tournament victory was at Kiev in 1938. He became an international master in 1950. Panov was ranked 21st in the world in 1948, which was higher than many grandmasters. In the 1950s, his results started to decline, but his popularity as a chess writer was on the incline and continued to increase. He is best known for his writings and theoretical work on the openings. Panov's attack, pawn to c4, knight f6, knight c3, pawn e6, knight f3 is the Yusupov-Rubinstein system, although it certainly would not have been known by that name when this game was played, since Artur Yusupov would have only been 4 months old when this game was played. But that's what we know it as today, the Yusupov-Rubinstein system. Bishop e7, c5, castles. Now b4 is not a book move. The ECO is bishop d3. After b6, then b4. And after a5, now knight a4. The most common reply is queen's knight to d7 right there. You'll find that in volume B, section 14 of your Encyclopedia of Chess Openings. Going back, b4 was played here, and b6, bishop d3. Marked inaccurate. Pawn takes the pawn. a5 would be thematic to what I just showed, and a5 is called for by Fickelbot. Instead, pawn takes the pawn, and b takes the pawn. Now knight c6, also questioned by the bot. Bishop a6 being called for. Well, bishop a6 makes great sense, doesn't it? And the reason for that is that this is a bad bishop, caged in by his own pawns. So it's good practice to trade your bad bishop for your opponent's good bishop. Bishop a6. After takes, takes. Instead, knight c6 was played and Bobby castles. Bishop d7, and now h3. Knight e8, marked inaccurate. Queen c7 being called for. I actually like queen a5 because it attacks this undefended knight. Let me see what I get. The bot preferring queen c7. What do we get for queen a5? A check mark. Seemed good to me. Knight e8 played by Borislav Ivkov. Bishop f4, bishop f6, bishop b5. White better here, according to eval bar. Knight c7. That attacks the bishop, and he retreats his bishop to e2, marked as a blunder, and the eval bar definitely concurs, a4 being the more deadly reply right here. Bobby apparently wanting to retain the bishop pair, but I don't think he dares take this bishop anyway. is the bot's point. This would be bad practice because I'm taking that with tempo, and my pawns are looking very ominous as they go further into enemy territory. So where are you going to put this? Knight a5, like in the other line, gets a thumbs up, but these side-by-side pawns are really controlling a lot of territory here, and that's pretty strong. Not to mention an eventual push against that bishop. Not that we care much about his bishop, because it's a bad bishop. Notice he's contained by his own pawns here and ours here. Come back. Bishop e2 awarded a blunder from the annotator. Knight takes the d-man. Knight takes the d-man. Now pawn e5 is a fork. Pawn c6 hits the bad bishop. Bishop e8, bishop g3. You can't let him flee to b5, so pawn takes the knight now. Bishop takes the knight on c7. Knight b5 being called for. On knight b5, he'll take with his knight, I'll take with my bishop. Queen b6 hits the bishop, and I'll have to retreat and blockade. I could defend with rook b1. Queen a4 being called for by the bot here. Can I not? I get a check mark. Either way, he can take this pawn, I guess is the point. But if queen a4, that's not possible. Bishop takes c7. Now queen takes c7, knight takes d5, and queen d6. Don't take the pawn. Queen d6 is the move. Gets a star. Do not play and take the so-called free pawn with your queen, because bishop f3, baby. You'll have to move, and then on knight e7 check, well, it doesn't like rook b8. I guess because after the check, I'm winning the queen. Oops, that was a mouse slip. Terrific. A mouse slip even when I'm doing demo. Something like that. So it didn't like the rook b8. What should I have played instead of rook b8? I'm sorry, let me go back. Oh, rook d8. Well, rook d8 doesn't change anything. I'm confused. Queen d6 is the correct move. He played knight takes bishop check. c7 is a very interesting move, but knight takes the bishop is played. Queen takes the knight, now c7, and rook c1 should be nice. So rook c8 is played, rook c1, bishop c6, interfering with my rook's defense of the c-man. Rook c4, super attacking the d-man, rook takes the c-man, black attacking, and I'm surprised that he does not capture this pawn. I would capture it with the queen, actually. Put the question to the dark matriarch. Bobby played bishop d3. Well, the bot says rook takes d4. I preferred this because it does interrogate the dark matriarch. And yes, a trade can be avoided, perhaps. I might put the question out there again. Point is bishop d3. I'm not sure what he's going for here. Rook d7, queen c2. Okay. Yeah, a4 being called for. Interesting. I would think queen g4 would be a move. Getting some pressure here and here. Some ideas. Queen c2. Bishop d5. Big question mark there. Bishop b5. Same idea, but it skewers the rook and the bishop. So after I play rook c5, you trade. Yeah. Instead, rook d5 was played. Now rook a4, g6. That's going to keep my bishop off of f5 as well. Queen c5, king's rook to d8. Bishop b5 hits the rook. Rook d1 is being called for. I would think rook c1 as well, right? Inaccurate. Just a thought. Bishop b5 questioned. Rook d6 was played here with a big red X. Bishop takes g2 is the move called for. Vacating d5 for rook d5. And if you take the rook, you don't want to take the bishop because of rook d5. But if you take the rook, I've got bishop takes rook. And after king takes bishop, rook takes bishop, and black is looking grand. I do pick up a pawn here, but he can consolidate with queen d8, and this is looking ominous. Come back. We don't want to play the queen to g5, I don't think. Threatening checkmate. Gets a big red X as well. Because f3 prevents the protection, and then I'll get out of the queen's line of fire on the next turn. Let's say here, then I'll come over here. Well, rook d6 is what Ivkov tried, and Bobby with rook d1. Don't know why he doesn't capture the pawn. Or even better, capture this pawn, I think. Yeah, that's even better, because it kind of helps to control this file. Really forget that pawn. That's actually not a good idea at all. This is the pawn. He played rook d1. Yeah, rook takes d4 is the best move to play. Play that first. So, for example, after bishop takes a2, then rook takes d6 can be played. So that's much better than taking this pawn up here, which I can take with my queen, by the way, for example, after rook takes rook. Bobby with rook d1. Now bishop e6 also gets a big red X, and we are in the 30s, by the way, on the move count. Once again, bishop takes g2 is quite a move. On king takes, we get rook d5, as mentioned before. Now, you still don't want to try this cheap shot. I can still defend. I can even use my bishop to defend here. Get an exclam for that. If d3, then I'll take this with my rook. Well, rook d1, bishop e6, and bishop d3. Here, rook d5 is played, hitting the queen, and queen takes the pawn. Queen a3 puts the rook on the spearhead of the battery instead. Capture that a-man with the rook on the next turn. Instead, queen takes the pawn, and now Ivkov gets the idea, and he plays bishop takes h3 with a double exclam. Nice move, Ivkov. And the point is, you can't take that. It's a self-mate. So he tried bishop e4 here. Queen c7 called for. Note, though, pawn takes gets the big blunder, and it's a forced checkmate after that. How do we get it? Well, we've got a wide open G file, so let's play rook g5 check. After the king comes to f1, my queen comes to f3, threatening queen h1. All I need to do is keep white's king from coming to the e file, and I'm going to do that with this rook. So, for example, let's play bishop c2, rook e8. And now, what stops checkmate? There's nothing preventing queen h1 checkmate, no matter what you play. I mean, you can stall, but no matter what you play, this checkmate is coming sooner or later. Queen h1 is checkmate. So you can't play pawn takes the bishop. Beautiful move by Ivkov. So Bobby tries bishop e4. Rook 5 goes back to d7 and hits the queen. Queen a6. Queen takes the queen. Bot liking the retraction. Interpose with bishop e6. Queen takes the queen. Rook takes the queen. Bishop e6 now. Pawn a4. Play bishop d3 first to blockade this pawn. Do not let the pawn get here, and then play a4 next. But a4 was played, and d3 is played, and now you can't move your bishop to d3 because of the battery. d2 is looming, isn't it? So he tries blockading with rook d2. Rook d4 hits the bishop. Black should try bishop c4, says the bot. I'm going to play rook a8, rook takes rook, bishop takes rook. Might be able to hold this. I do have a passed pawn, but his is really a lot healthier than mine. Rook d4 was played, f3 defends, bishop d5, bishop takes the bishop, rook d8 captures the bishop, 2 rooks against 2 rooks in the endgame, king f2, rook c4, so h5 being called for. I guess that seems, I'm playing king e3, it's a little bit wilder. Rook c4, a5, and then he played rook a4. I was not expecting that. It's inaccurate. h5, no, rook c3 is being called for. Rook c3, interesting. I thought h5 might be up there again. It's still given a check mark. Rook a4, rook c6 relinquishes the pawn. So rook a3 was played, not wanting a super attack against his well-advanced passed pawn. And this illustrates what I've said many times. Pawns in enemy territory are not 1-point pieces. They're 2-point pieces, 4-point pieces, 6-point pieces, and then they're 9-point pieces called a queen. So this one pawn is nearly worth a rook. So if he takes here, I do get a check mark for takes. Well, rook a2 would simply be winning. You'd have to super attack this pawn so that after rook a2 you can capture with a defense. And then you're down 1 pawn, but you should be able to hold. Let's say h5, rook takes rook check, king g3. And you should be able to hold on this endgame. Rook a3 was played here, rook c1. You can also play a6, yeah. Rook c1, now h5. Now he doubles his rooks on the d-man. King g7, pawn a6 now. Eventually, this rook will have to take, and then this pawn can be captured. g5, a7, and now he does take, and now he does take. Rook a2 check, king g1, rook takes rook, rook takes rook. This is fizzling out to a draw. King g6, king h2. The burden of proof is on Bobby here. Rook a4, rook d5, g4. Rook a3 should also work. There's really quite a few ways to go. I'll play rook d4 here, right? Something like that. He could even play rook a2 here. That gets a star, actually. But g4, f takes the g-man, h takes the g-man. Now g3. King g3 is better. First rule of the endgame, activate your king. But g3 was played, and he plays king f6. The bot calling for rook e4. I thought black should go ahead and tell white that he made a mistake by playing g3 instead of king g3. In other words, play rook a2 here, forcing him to the first rank, and then bring the pawn up. Still should be dead drawn either way. King f6, rook d7, and rook d2 is just as good here, just taking a defensive posture. Rook d7, king e5, bot calling for king g6, probably not king e6, even though it gets a thumbs up. We'll just play rook d2 on this line as well. And again, you can always play rook a2 check here. You can always play this and then just come back up and basically get a repetition now. But black's the guy with the extra pawn, so he probably doesn't want a repetition. King e5 was tried, king g2. I don't know why he didn't take the pawn. I mean, that's definitely drawn now. It's the same thing. King g2 was played, now f5. And rook a2 is always going to be available, by the way, because it's check. Until you play rook d2, then it's not available. Rook c4, rook e2 check, king d4, rook f2, hitting the pawn, rook c5. I mean, black's got one extra pawn, but is he really better? Not really. Rook f4 check, king e3, king g1, move 60, second time control satisfied. He offered the draw, and it was accepted. Now let's look at the numbers from this game. Not as impressive as the previous games. 89.6 for Bobby, 89.2 for Ivkov. Bobby's single game rating 2650, still impressive. Ivkov 2600.